Hi, this is Pete with ECS Tuning, and today I'm going to show you how to replace the flex disc on a BMW M3. Today we're working on an E36 chassis, but this DIY video will pretty much be able to use for most all BMW chassis that are rear-wheel drive. In order to access the flex disc, we're going to need to remove the exhaust, all the heat shields, and then we have easy access to the flex disc. Next step is to remove the oxygen sensor wires from their loom. Note which connection is located where. Disconnect the connections from the chassis. Next step will be to disconnect your exhaust from your headers. Come down to midway, you'll disconnect these exhaust brackets. And finally, you'll disconnect your muffler hangers. We highly recommend getting a friend to help. The system is long, heavy, and awkward. On these fasteners here, you may have to apply heat. We got lucky and the fasteners have been removed before, so we did not need to. Next step will be to remove the loom tray and your heat shield. Now that the drive shaft is exposed, we're going to do a driveline inspection. Our flex disc is showing cracking, which is what we're going to be changing. We're also seeing cracking in our transmission mounts, so we might as well go and replace those right now. And then we're going to do a drive shaft inspection. Quick wiggle of the drive shaft should be silent. That ringing shows that our universal joints need replaced. While we're here, we're going to go ahead and replace this drive shaft. You can replace the flex disc without dropping the drive shaft. You'll need to remove these 6 bolts. You're going to need to loosen your lock collar on your drive shaft, and then you will need to drop your carrier bearing. Loosen the lock collar on the drive shaft. Pry the drive shaft back away from the flex joint. And finally, drop the carrier bearing, which should release the drive shaft from the transmission. Now pull down on the drive shaft with the carrier bearing, press the other end up, exposing the flex disc, and remove. All you're doing is replacing your flex disc. Installation will be in reverse order, but we're going to go ahead and replace the drive shaft. We're going to remove the drive shaft, so we need to hold the drive shaft in place. Remove the nuts securing the drive shaft to the final drive. And simply slip the drive shaft through the cross member. We're going to be replacing transmission mounts with a factory replacement piece. If you want to tighten up your drive line a little bit, ECS also offers a poly upgrade. Placement of these mounts are simple. We've removed the nuts from the tops and bottoms of the mount. We're going to lift the transmission. Make sure you're on the edge of the transmission pan, not in the center. Lift the transmission till the mounts are free, and replace. You will see there's a little tab there that will line up in your slot. After you've lowered the transmission onto the mounts, run all your fasteners up tight, torque to 16 foot-pounds. Now we're ready to reinstall our new drive shaft. Slide the drive shaft through the cross member. Align it with your final drive. Our drive shaft has 10mm rib nut fasteners. those will get torqued to 59 foot-pounds. If you have a CV style drive flange, it will be torqued to 23 foot-pounds. And if you have compressed nuts instead of rib nuts, it will be 44 foot-pounds. As you can see, the flex disc has arrows marked on them, and they alternate. You want to make sure that that arrow lines up with the drive flange. You never want to have the arrow facing the opposite direction. Correct? Incorrect. Now we're ready to install our new flex disc. Hang it on the output shaft of the transmission. Slide your drive shaft into place. Lift your carrier bearing up and start the fasteners. Now we're ready to install our hardware. As we talked about before, we want to make sure that our arrows are facing our drive flanges. You can reuse your bolts, but BMW recommends replacing at least the nuts. Now we will install the drive shaft hardware, and then take a screwdriver to slide the drive shaft into place. Now we can tighten all our fasteners, and when they're tight, we will torque them to a final value of 85 foot-pounds. Consult a manual. Various models will have different torque specs. The next step will be to set the preload on our support bearing, which means we will take the bearing, slide it forward approximately 1/4 of an inch, snug down the fasteners, which will then get torqued to 16 foot-pounds. Final step in installing the drive shaft is to snug down our locking collar on the drive shaft. BMW specifies 7.5 pounds for this, but if you just make sure it's snug down, you'll be fine, because all this is doing is sealing up the drive shaft. Final steps for reassembly will be installing your heat shields, rehang your exhaust, connect your oxygen sensors, and you should be good to go.